Hey there, everybody. It's Mychal A. Bryan here from the Oraculos School of Astrology. If you've been wanting to finally master concrete predictive astrology, then now's your chance, because my Horary Astrology Certification Program is beginning this January 10th, and enrollment is happening right now. For those of you who know me, you know that divination has always been a humongous part of my life. Whether it's been the Kabbalistic Tarot, or predictive astrology, or dream interpretation, or the runes, or geomancy, divination has always been a pillar of who I am as a person. And at the core of all divination-based practices for me has always been both astrology and, more specifically, Horary astrology. This program is 14 weeks of real training with real charts and real predictions. You're going to learn the exact method that I've used for years with thousands of clients from around the world to get them concrete information from and through the use of Horary astrology. So, if you want to join us and if you want to elevate the level of your own professional practice, both as an astrologer as well as a professional level diviner, then join us this January 10th in our Horary Astrology Certification Program. See to fill in quickly, so once again, join us this January 10th, and I cannot wait to see you there. Hi there, everyone. Mychal A. Bryan here from the Oraculos School of Astrology with next week's astrology for the week of December 7th through December 13th, 2025. I'm really excited to dive into the astrology of the week ahead. So without further ado, let us jump into those astrological waters. First up, the best thing I can ever think about astrologically speaking, and that's absolutely not fully true. But one of the best things I can think about astrologically speaking is that on December 7th, we have the combination of Venus in a Sesquiquadrate relationship with Jupiter. Venus-Jupiter is the combination that represents lovers' bliss. And this combination is happening at 7:20 p.m. EST. It is a wonderful, auspicious, lovely combination, and it's one that we love to love, and it's one that we also love to talk about because Venus is a benefic, Jupiter is a benefic. So in their coming together, they do nothing but bring benevolence our way. So we love the Venus-Jupiter combination for sure. Now, that is going to be happening on December 7th at 7:20 p.m. EST. So if we are desirous of getting married to anybody or proposing to anybody, it's a good day to do it, even earlier in the day before that aspect becomes exact, because even earlier in the day, the Venus is going to be within 1 degree of exactitude. So it's a wonderful day as far as love, as far as romance, as far as expressing our affection for others, but also as far as establishing peace and reconciliation between ourselves and others. So we love the 7th of December for all of these reasons. Now, later on this day, the 7th of December, we have the moon, which is going to be in a trine relationship with Neptune. And after which she's going to be void, of course, for about an hour until she ingresses into Leo at 9:47 p.m. EST. Moon void, of course, not the best thing in the world for anything, because the moon void, of course, does not have vital winds to support us in our efforts or our endeavors. So be mindful that between 8:44 p.m. EST and 9:47 p.m. EST, the moon is going to be void, of course. Then when the moon is in Leo, the ancients tell us that even though the moon doesn't have any major essential dignity in Leo whatsoever, since the moon is the wife of the sun, and since the sun is the husband of the moon, they take care of each other in some way when they are in each other's houses. So even though the ancients don't give us a way of quantifiably quantifying how well the moon is doing when she is in Leo, we're led to believe that the moon in Leo is doing a little bit better than if she were to be elsewhere. So we like the moon in Leo, we don't love it in Leo, but we also like the fact that she's no longer void, of course. Moving on to the next day, which is going to be December 8th. This is Monday, the 8th of December, and we have the combination of Venus in a contra-parallel relationship with Jupiter. And I think this is interesting because on the 7th, we saw that Venus was in a Sesquiquadrate relationship with Jupiter in terms of the zodiac. And now on the 8th, we're seeing that Venus is in a contra-parallel relationship with Jupiter. And I think this is an important thing for us to realize, because just because we see planets making one arrangement within a zodiacal context doesn't mean that that's the only arrangement that they're making in the sky. And these are two powerful arrangements. So December 7th and December 8th are looking like very powerful days as far as love and reconciliation and peace and harmony are concerned as a result of the Venus-Jupiter combinations. Now, on the 8th of December, we also have a combination that we really aren't that fond of, and it's the combination of the Sun in a semi-square relationship with Pluto, and that's happening at 5:21 p.m. EST. And here we have the Sun at 16 degrees of Sagittarius and Pluto over there at 2 degrees of Aquarius. Later on this day, the Sun is going to go to 17 degrees of Sagittarius, and we know that 17 degrees of the mutable signs equals 2 degrees of the fixed signs, and that is our Sun-Pluto semi-square. Now, the only reason I say that we don't like it is because Pluto intrinsically is a god of abnormal growth and abnormal functioning. There was someone recently on the YouTube channel that had an issue with me saying that Pluto was in charge of abnormal anything because his contention was that Pluto was a god of transformation. But when people come at me in that sort of way, my question often is, says who? Who did you learn that from? And why has it become such an essential part of our astrological language that Pluto corresponds with transformation? Who says that? Because more often than not, the same people who say that Pluto corresponds with transformation are the same people who say that the 8th house corresponds with sex, which is emphatically 1000% untrue. It is untrue in this world and in every world. There is no universe within which the 8th house corresponds with sex ever in 1,000 years prior or 1,000 years to come. And so when people hit me with the, oh, this is wrong because Pluto, blah, 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 you know, I have to figure out how to organize myself within myself, because the reality is that a lot of the things that people parrot emphatically are things that they heard somebody else say. And the people who they oftentimes heard those things say are people who... Anyway, the point of the matter is that Pluto and transformation might be a nice term to use, but more often than not, especially in a concrete world with a concrete worldview where we care about how things concretely manifest within our lives, Pluto more often than not has to do with abnormal blockage, abnormal functioning, abnormal growth. Those are the three things that Pluto corresponds with. And this is the first time in my life I've ever said abnormal blockage. But it is also abnormal blockage because when Pluto tells you no, it feels as if the gods in heaven are making a cosmic joke off of your life, because nothing that you try to do will turn that no into a yes. So Pluto is a god of abnormal blockage, abnormal functioning, abnormal growth. The current local time is 11:11 a.m. EST. I sincerely hope that you're having a wonderful time with me, and I sincerely hope that you also make a wish. I'm going to close my eyes and make a wish because yes, I am superstitious, and yes, I do believe that 11:11 is a cosmic portal to the universe. So let's pause. Pluto is a god of abnormality. 1,000 times more than Pluto will ever be a planet that corresponds with the word transformation. And maybe it still does correspond with transformation, but Pluto is more abnormality forward than it is transformation forward. And I don't even know what else to say about that, because I don't get into arguments with people. People get into arguments with me. So Pluto, Sun-Pluto, could represent a day of abnormality, a day of abnormal intensity. That's another thing that Pluto is famous for, abnormal intensity. And it could be a lot of pressure, particularly around the topic of love and relationships. And I say particularly around the topic of love and relationships because Venus is in a contra-parallel with Jupiter on this same day. So we expect for the day to be a merging of all of these factors. Now, the day goes from good to bad to badder, because next on the same day, we have the combination of Mars in a square relationship with Saturn. This day is probably the most significant day this week, this 8th of December, because Mars-Saturn is one of the worst combinations that exist within astrology, in much the same way as Jupiter, or rather Venus-Jupiter, is one of the best combinations that exist within astrology. So on this day, we find ourselves teetering between the best combination in astrology the combination between the two benefics and the worst combination in astrology, the combination between the two malefics. I will say to you that this day has given us one good and two bads. The one good is the Venus-Jupiter, the two bads is the Sun-Pluto, and the next bad is the Mars-Saturn. If it looks like a duck and smells like a duck and quacks like a duck, it will give you duck. And so I believe that the good of the day does not mitigate the overarching challenges that we see manifesting on the 8th of December. It's a very challenging day. Mars-Saturn has to do with frustration and people who act out of frustration because they feel as if they're being thwarted. And as a result of that, they become even more aggressive and even more volatile and even more violent. And the Sun-Pluto makes it feel that much more intense. So this could be a very challenging day within the world at large. It could be a very challenging day in terms of how people are arming themselves and how people are protecting themselves and people feeling as if they need to arm themselves and as if they need to protect themselves. So it could be a day of very intense violence and a day of very intense displays of people's anger. Anger could be explosive on this day because of people feeling fundamentally suppressed or as if their voices are being locked within themselves. So December 8th, tricky day, as far as I'm concerned, awful day, and it's something for us to keep our eyes on. Now, moving on through to the 9th of December. On the 9th of December, Tuesday, December 9th, we have the moon in a square relationship with Uranus, and afterwards she's going to be void of course from 11:56 p.m. EST to 2:19 a.m. EST, after which she ingresses into Virgo. The moon enjoys being in Taurus and the moon enjoys being in Virgo. Those are two signs where the moon thrives because the moon enjoys being in the earth element. The only earth sign the moon doesn't thrive in is Capricorn. And of course, the reason for that is because Capricorn is a sign of her detriment. But in general, the moon, because of her fluctuating nature, she enjoys being in earth signs more than any other triplicity within the zodiac. So we like a moon in Virgo. It's a wonderful moon for getting things done in a practical, pragmatic way. We love a moon in Virgo, and she's going to be there for the next 2.5 days. Now, that was December 10th, 2025, is the moon ingressing into Virgo. Now, on the same day, the 10th of December, which is going to be Wednesday, December 10th, we have Neptune stationing direct, and that's happening at 7:22 a.m. EST. And Neptune is going to be stationing direct at 29 degrees Pisces, period. At 29 degrees Pisces, 22 minutes. It's a big statement whenever any planet is at the final degree of a sign. It's also a huge statement whenever any planet is stationing direct or stationing retrograde at the final degree of a sign. There are these big omen-based statements that seem to be made when these things happen. Now, as far as I'm concerned, I still want to wait and see what aspects this Neptune is going to make as it's moving forward. But if you're a person with this Neptune stationing direct on some vital factor within your chart, the things that vital factor rules might feel as if they're taking on a Neptunian overlay. Maybe they feel as if they're slipping between your fingers. Maybe it feels as if you can't consolidate those things in the way that you want. Maybe it feels as if the ground beneath your feet is losing its footing and as if you don't know where you're stabilized within the world and you're desperately trying to find your way back in relation to what that thing represents and rules within your chart. It's a great time to go and get a reading from your friendly local neighborhood astrologer, whoever that person is, because whenever we have Neptune running amok within our natal charts, it could make it a little bit difficult as far as the topics that Neptune is influencing within our charts are concerned. So that's the 10th of December with the Neptune stationing direct. On this same day, we have the combination of Mercury in opposition to Uranus. That's happening at 2:58 p.m. EST. And that's the last aspect happening on the 10th of December, Wednesday, the 10th of December. Mercury-Uranus, as we know, is the combination of the astrological mind. It's the combination of the mind that has the ability to draw down lightning from heaven and do extraordinary, amazing things within the world at large. We love a Mercury-Uranus. I don't particularly love the degrees that this combination is happening at such late degrees in Taurus and Scorpio. And the reason for that is because the end of Taurus in particular is thought of as being a graveyard of despair, basically a field of corpses is what the ancient Chinese tell us. So potentially the shocking news that we're hearing that wakes us up in the middle of the night on this day, December 10th, is going to be something that is of a particularly challenging nature. And so we want to be mindful of that. We have these two major challenging combinations happening this week, which is going to be the Mars square the Saturn on December 8th, as well as the Mercury opposite Uranus. Not because Mercury opposite Uranus is challenging in general, but because Mercury opposite Uranus on this day, at this degree, does not seem to be an opposition that carries the greatest amount of joy or levity. So that's the last thing happening in the sky on Wednesday, December 10th. Now we're going to move on through to December 11th, which is the day upon which we have Venus in a square relationship with the nodes, and that's happening at 4:16 a.m. EST. Venus nodes, and here we have Venus in a square relationship to the south node. Once again, from any of the two nodes, when we move forward in zodiacal order to its first square, that is going to be the square to that specific node. So yes, while on the one hand, we can say that Venus is equally squaring both nodes, with her being at 13 degrees of Sagittarius and the nodes being at 13 degrees of Pisces and Virgo respectively in terms of the north and the south node, the node that we would specifically say she is squaring is going to be the south node because she's occupying the southern bending. The southern bending is one of the toilet bowls of the universe. Whenever something finds itself there, it is afflicted in both the things it universally represents, i.e. Venus universally represents love, and it's also afflicted in terms of the things that it specifically represents within the chart. So if this were the real chart of a person, for example, we would say that Venus is ruling this person's second house, and therefore Venus at the southern bending would represent that person's financial affects within the world, or that person's financial stability in the world, is likely to be threatened or challenged or somehow made quite uncomfortable based on Venus's being at the southern bending. Whereas if that same Venus ruling that person's second house were at the northern bending, we would say that that person will face a major crossroads within their lives as far as their money is concerned, but that crossroad is ultimately something that is positive and uplifting, and that will set them up for greater financial success in the future. So that's the difference between the two bendings, south node bad and north node good. Now let's see what else is happening in the sky. On this 11th of December, we have I think this is the date of birth of my first girlfriend, actually. The only girl I've ever loved in kindergarten. Her name was Darnell. And I think this is her birthday, December 11th. Hey, Darnell. Now, moving on through to December 11th, same day, actually, we have Mercury ingressing into Sagittarius. That's happening at 5:39 p.m. EST. And here we have that Mercury ingressing into Sagittarius. Well, here we see it at the anorectic degree of Scorpio. But if we move forward one day, we see Mercury having ingress into Sagittarius. And that is going to be an interesting time. Mercury in Sagittarius, especially when that Mercury is afflicted by Uranus, as this Mercury is. We see Mercury at 0 degrees Sag, but the Uranus is at 28 degrees Taurus. For me, that is a completely permissible out-of-sign opposition. Mercury in Sag afflicted by Uranus is one of the combinations that we oftentimes find in the charts of people who often end up getting diagnosed with some form of an attention deficit disorder within this lifetime. And the reason for that is because Mercury in Sagittarius is the mind on fire, and the mind everywhere, anywhere, all at once, basically. And Uranus only further speeds that up and makes that more volatile. Within the Kabbalistic Tarot, the card that this corresponds with is my brain is doing things. The card that this corresponds with is the 8 of Wands. And the 8 of Wands is called the Lord of Swiftness. So this will be a time when we get a lot done quite quickly, but it's also a time when we all might feel very mentally exhausted during Mercury's entire sojourn through Sagittarius. So just be mindful to give yourself more touchstones of mindfulness and peace and rest within your life, because the Mercury in Sagittarius definitely does not correspond with rest at all. And we might all find ourselves feeling that much more frazzled while Mercury is in this sign. Now, moving on through to the 12th of December, we have the moon making her last aspect in the sky, which is moon opposite Neptune. That's happening at 9:50 a.m. EST, after which she's going to be void of course for roughly 1 hour and 10 minutes until she ingresses into Libra at 11:03 a.m. EST, at which point it is a wonderful time to resume all of the things that we want to be doing and all the things that we want to have some extra life and energy behind them, because we know that when the moon is void, of course, the sky has a little less energy in it, whereas when the moon is not void, of course, and making aspect, the sky has abundant, or at least a little bit more energy in it to support our endeavors. Thank you all so much for joining us here for yet another episode of next week's astrology. I sincerely hope that this was of benefit to you, and definitely wanting to send a major shout out to our annual sponsors, our annual members in Mychal's Cosmic Conservatory: Claire, Sarah, Thea, Lisa, Jessie, Merriman, and Shauna. Thank you all so much for supporting us in the way that you do and for helping us keep this show on the road. Until next time, I'm your host, Mychal A. Bryan, leaving you in peace and love and hope until we meet again. Have a good one. Bye.